Well, wish you could see my shirt. It says Lifestyle Christianity. My wife got it for me years ago. For those of you who don't know me, I am Pastor Chris Harris of Louisville, Kentucky, with Grains of Sand Ministry. We are broadcasting live here from our headquarters here, as we do every week. And today we are going to dive into something that I believe is going to reshape how we think about some things. And what we're going to be dealing with, really, is talking about authority. And we're going to talk about in different places of authority and how we think of that. So, we have been talking about judgment is justice, and last week we talked about the wrath of God, the fire of God, brimstone, and we reframed how we would think about that. The first week we began talking about love and how God is love and embracing that love and having that love as our foundation. And I want to say, continuing with that, that God is remaining still love. Now, for those of you that may have said, because I heard this growing up as well, that God is love, but brother, remember, God is holy also. And to that, I would say that we need to look a little bit deeper. When I say deeper, we need to get a very clear picture of what holy actually is, because holiness is actually an adjective that is descriptive of something. Okay. This is what we find out in the Greek and the New Testament. Now, in the Old Testament, it does show up as a noun, but then later, one of the things that we have to look at when we look at John chapter 14, Jesus tells Philip, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Okay, we're shortening a lot of this because I don't want to go back and explain all of this again. And then later in Second Corinthians, we find out that if you're looking at the law of Moses, and you're looking at it through the lens of Moses, then you're looking at a view that is a distorted view. It's not a view that is one that is clear. And until you see it through Jesus and in Jesus, then you don't really see clearly. Now, I want to say right off what it actually means to see through the lens of Jesus, because one of the things I think we need to start with today, before we really get into authority, is in order to change our mindset um, about authority, then the first place we have to begin is we have to start from a place of union, not separation. Because most of what we've taught and what has been taught in the West, especially, begins with a place of separation. Let me say it like this: it begins with a place of lostness and being lost. And we start the messages this way. This is the hinge point to why we would preach the gospel. Why do we preach the gospel? Because people are lost. Now, all I'm saying here, I'm talking about conversations. I'm talking about ways that we've thought. I'm not saying this is where we're landing at today. So just understand that if you're viewing this, just this is where we're starting at. Okay. This is how we've thought about things. Okay. We have preached the gospel, and the reason that we have preached the gospel, we have said, has been because there are lost people. And my question becomes that what happens when there's no more lost people, in the sense that we say lost and we have been taught lost? Because you're going to find out today that lostness may mean something much different than what we have said it means and what we have declared that it means. Okay. So lostness is not, let me start there first. Okay. Lostness, and then we have, which I'm going to relate that to separation. Okay. And then union, we're going to tie to something we're going to talk about here in just a second. So let's go to Luke chapter 15. Okay. I'm in the NRSVUE, and I'm going to go to Luke chapter 15. All right. And we're going to kind of go through these, and these are different parables that Jesus was telling. Now, if you want to understand what a parable isn't first of all, a parable is not a true story. Let me start there. It's not based on necessarily a real event. It would be like telling the story about the tortoise and the hare, and the tortoise that beat the hare. Well, that's an actual story that we both know that if we put a tortoise out next to a rabbit, the rabbit naturally is going to burn through it all day long. So the purpose is not to focus in on the literal details, but what is the story conveying? What is the message that it's conveying? And in that story, if you've never heard the story of the tortoise and the hare, the tortoise beats the hare because the hare, the rabbit, trusts in its own ability so much that it gets overconfident and it stops racing. It stops doing what it knows it can do to win. And eventually, because the tortoise represents steady and patience and not giving up, but steady and keeping the race, the tortoise ends up beating the hare. Now, that should not have happened naturally, but it did happen, and that's the purpose of the story is based on. So understand that when we're looking at parables, the purpose of the parable is not to focus in on the literal details. The purpose of the parable is to focus in on what is the story trying to convey. Okay? So what is the story trying to convey? All right. So let me go here. Let's see here. All right. Let me see here. All right. Okay, let's keep going here. So Luke chapter 15. All right. So remember when we talked about parables. All right. Now, verse 1. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling, saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. Remember what a parable is. The parable is not focusing in on the literal details, but what is the story trying to convey? Because remember, if we focused in on the literal details of what a parable is trying to convey, then we would never get the story of what the tortoise and the hare was trying to say. Okay? We get that. So he told them this parable. Which of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my lost sheep." Okay, here is the purpose of this parable here. The purpose of this parable is to talk about a sheep that was lost and the sheep that got found. Now, I will say we do a lot of lostness in the American church, but we don't do much finding. We focus a lot on the lost part, but not much on the finding part. Okay. The purpose of this is that the lost sheep, the one sheep that was lost, was found. Okay. Now, let's go to this next one here. All right. Not even going to read the headings, but we're going to keep reading. Or what woman having 10 silver coins? I'll read that again. Or what woman having 10 silver coins? Let me go back up here. Verse 3 in Luke chapter 15. I'm throwing a hint out here, but I'm not going to give it to you yet. So he told them this parable. Which of you having 100 sheep? Okay. So let me go back down to our other one here. Which of you, or what woman having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost." Okay. All right. Here's the point. All right. Then Jesus goes in and talks about something that I'm not even going to read the heading of it because the heading can throw you off. The heading in most Bibles will say the parable of the prodigal son. The interesting thing is that Jesus never called the son a prodigal. The son was in prodigal living. Aren't you glad that Jesus doesn't define you by what you do? Okay. You are defined by who you are and who made you and from the originator that you came from. That's how you are defined. That's how all humanity is defined. And so in this, we're going to go and read. Then Jesus said, there was a man who had two sons. So Jesus got done talking about the lost sheep, which of you having 100 sheep. Then he talked about the woman that lost the coin, What woman that having 10 coins loses one? And now he tells a parable to the same crowded audience that seemingly seems out of place. And remember, a parable again is not to focus on the literal details, but to focus on what does that story mean? What is the message it's trying to convey? Remember, if we focus in on the literal details, we would never get the story of the tortoise and the hare. All right. Then Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of wealth that belongs to me. So he divided his assets between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant region. And there he squandered his wealth in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that region, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that region, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare, but here I am dying of hunger? I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands. So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him. I'm glad that the Father sees us while we're still a long way off. And the Father doesn't wait for us to get to the Father. The Father eventually, it literally comes to us. Saw him and was filled with compassion. Look at that. The Father was not filled with malice. The Father was not standing there with his arms crossed saying, there comes that old wretched son of mine. I tell you what, get your tail up on this porch. I can't do nothing. None of that was said. Even that's what we would do. But he said, while he was still afar off, filled with compassion, he ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. So the son prayed his little prayer, gave his little spiel to the father. But look what the father says. But the father said to the slaves, the servants, quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Because in that time, slaves, ones who served, they didn't have shoes. So which is why he said, bring him some shoes. Okay. Get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again, was lost and is found, and they began to celebrate. Now, I don't believe Jesus was telling 2 parables back to back on purpose or just by happenstance, just to get to this and then throw everybody for a loop and seemingly go to a different direction, when in reality, this parable that Jesus is telling is conveying the same message. Here's what it is, saints. Hear me. In all lostness, there is belonging. Let's say that again. In all lostness, there is belonging. I don't have anything else I'm going to show you. No keys or anything, but my keys are over there. But I will say this, okay? My car keys belong to me, okay? My laptop that I'm using a laptop here. Here it is. All right. That's how I peruse through some of these scriptures so quick. But here's the point. This is mine. It belongs to me. If I lose this and I have to find it or misplace it, then it's mine to find because it belonged to me first. See, I purchased this, or my wife actually purchased this for me as a gift, and this belongs to me. Because this belongs to me, this laptop did not start off being lost. My wife did not go through and begin, I wonder if I can find him one. No, it started off in belonging because it belongs to me. Okay, you catching this? Because it belongs to me, it cannot be lost if it first does not belong. It has to first belong before it can ever be lost. Do you see this? So when he said, which of you having 100 sheep, he's talking about belonging. What woman having 10 coins? He's talking about belonging. So where does this start at? This starts with belonging. Saints, we are connecting belonging to union and lostness with separation. You cannot begin the message with separation. And likewise, you don't begin with separation. In fact, the people you think that Jesus may love less, or maybe Jesus gives you special privileges because you go to church every week and you said this fancy prayer and did all of that. Let me tell you something, saints. Humanity, listen, all of humanity has been accepted into the life that Jesus has given. Jesus gave up his life, gave his life. And when Jesus gave his life, Jesus was pulling all of creation and all of humanity into his life. Now, repentance is us finding out just what that life is. And it is the good news is telling people you have been accepted. This is where it starts. Guess what? You do belong. You might not think you belong, but let me give you some good news. You do belong and you have been accepted. What? You mean I've been accepted? I belong? Start there. That's why it's called good news. You can't start with you're separated and you're over here. No, no. If their separation does exist, the Apostle Paul tells it like this: it is only in your own mind. You see that? It's only in your own head. It's something you're thinking about. It's not a thought that God is thinking about. I'm going to say that again, so some of you may not have got it. The separation is in your own mind. It's not in God's mind. The separation doesn't begin in God's mind. It began in our mind, and it is a delusional thought. It is a thought of darkness. But let me tell you, you do belong and you have been accepted. Belonging starts first. Why? Because Jesus can't seek and save that which was lost unless the lost first belonged. It is a thing that it makes sense. You can't go anywhere with being lost unless you first belong. I was at Thunder over Louisville one year. This was years ago. It haven't been years. And there was a woman that was running frantically because she had lost her son. Again, her son cannot be lost unless her son is her son. Okay, we can move on here. All right. So now we understand what these three parables are for, why they're there for, and that Jesus wasn't just spouting off something anywhere. Okay. So now let's go into this and let's begin to talk about authority, because you can't really talk about authority unless we first get this down about union and separation. You cannot begin with separation. You must begin with union and belonging. Now, you begin with union and belonging. That may mean that the gospel is what wakes you up to show you this is who you actually are. This is why Jesus would pray, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Guess who was around? Jews, Romans, everybody was around when Jesus said that. Jesus was including all peoples when he said this. Okay? Now, so then when we talk about authority, what does that actually mean? So, authority, when we talk about the English word authority, the root word to authority is author. It means originator. It means the creator. Okay. So, authority, the root word to authority is author. So, if you're going to understand real authority, then we have to understand author. An author is one that creates, an author is the one that originates. So, we have to understand that to understand authority, we have to understand the author and originator of authority, what that is. Okay. Now, we're going to look at two different words about authority. Okay. I'm going to go to my Blue Letter Bible. I'm going to look at John 1:12, and I'm also going to look at Acts 1:8. Okay. So again, Blue Letter Bible, for those of you who may or may not know, that is a free resource that you can download. And we are going to open this up here. All right. Okay. So John 1:12, here it is. All right. All right. So the Greek word for authority here, okay, and let's read in John 1:12. It says, as many as received him, he gave them power. In some translations, it says right to be or to become sons of God. Okay? Rights, power. Authority in the English translation, in most of your translations, whether it's NIV, King James Version, New King James, is either going to be translated as right or it's going to be translated as power. Okay? All right. In this case, King James will spell it out as power. Okay? So let me see if this it's going to read this for us. Yes.
Strong's G, 1849, exousia. Exousia.
Okay. Blue Letter Bible will do that for you. Look at these Greek words and man, what does it say? All right. So this means that now the difference is because there's two different Greek words in the Greek for authority, and they are very different concepts. So we're going to find that out. Okay. This one right here, it bears on the side of authority, the legal right of authority. That means you have it is lawful for you to do it. You have the legal right to do it. It is legally right. That's what that means. Okay. You have the right to do it. So it talks more from a governmental standpoint. Okay. But it has a few words that it comes from. All right. It is the power of choice or the liberty of doing as one please. It's the leave or permission. Okay. This authority is acting with permission that's already been given. Okay. If you are serving in the military or you are serving as a police officer, you have been given certain authorities that are pre-permission that you don't have to ask permission for. Okay. When you've been set on a spot, then you don't have to ask permission, i.e., if you're a police officer, to pull someone over for speeding. You don't have to call into the office and say, hey, there's somebody speeding. Can I go ahead and pull them over? They're going to like, you know what? Pull them over and then go ahead and drive on in because we don't know if you can do your job right. Okay. You don't have to see, there are pre-permissions that are given. And this is what this word exousia means. And it means authority that's given. It's permission that's given aforehand. Okay. That's what that means. You're given the right to do this. All right. So we understand what that one means. Now let's look at the other one. Let's look at Acts 1:8. All right. I'm going to go back here. We're going to go to Acts 1:8. All right. Acts 1:8. But you shall receive power. Okay. Here it is. You shall receive power. Now, this word here is dunamis. All right. It's dunamis. And I need to go back to my other one because I missed something, but we'll go back to it in a minute. Okay. Dunamis. And I believe it's going to pronounce it this way. Here we go.
Strong's G, 1411, dunamis. Dunamis.
Okay. This means it is inherent power. It means power that resides in something by virtue of its nature. It would be like saying, okay, this is a true story that happened. So years ago, I was driving in this dump truck and I was riding down a very small 2-lane road. And this 2-lane road, in the middle of it, it was washed out and there were parts of it that were broken out. And so it caused me to have to push toward the middle lane. Well, at the same time, there's this other car that's coming towards me and they're pushing towards the middle lane because the road is broke out right there. Now I got a decision to make. My decision is I'm in this large dump truck. They're in a little car. If I stay the course that this is happening, that's not going to be good for them. And that's going to be it potentially could be bad. So what do? I move over out of their way so they can get by because I knew. Boom. Okay. So here's the point I'm making. That dump truck, by way of its nature, can literally obliterate things smaller than it. Okay. So that's what we mean. Something, it resides in it by its nature because of how it's made. This is what it's capable of. The Greek word, other Greek word, or the origin of that word, for those who are taking notes, it's Strong's G 1411, but it comes from 1410. Now here it is. If you wanted to know where he's able comes from, this is it right here. And it literally means, it comes from the root word, to be able. This is what this means, To be able. That means able by its ability. So understand dunamis and power here. It means inherent in one's ability because it's there. Think of the dump truck scenario or anything else you might be able to think of. But when we read it in Acts, it says, behold, I give you power. This power shall come upon you by Holy Spirit. It is power that is inherent and resident within the Spirit that is now within you by nature. It is taking on your nature and it is interwoven and intertwined now within your very nature. It is called, saints, what this means to participate and share in the divine nature. This is what this means. Okay. But if we go back to John, because I missed something there, John 1:12, the Greek word that it starts with is 1849. It comes from the Greek word 1832. Okay. That Greek word 1832 simply means it is something that is lawful, which comes from two compound Greek words. And they means out, what they mean, sorry about that. What they mean is out of existence, one that exists. Now, why is all that? Why am I telling you all this? Because in John 8:58, Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. Then in Exodus 3:14, it says that, well, let's just go there real quick. Okay. Let's go there in Exodus 3:14. I'll show you. Exodus 3:14. God said to Moses, I am who I am. He said further, thus you shall say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. When you look that up in the original Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew, when you look that up, you can look it up in eSword or Blue Letter Bible. It means breath that exists. Breath that exists. One that exists. So if authority, the right to do something, comes from something that exists or what exists, what is present, then it stands to reason that your authority is in and of Jesus and comes out of who Jesus is. Now, this is what authority is. Because if authority comes from the author and it comes from the originator, it stands to reason that real authority is understanding the intimate nature of something so you can navigate authority within it, not necessarily over it, but within it. Why do I say that? Because Jesus told his disciples that you shall not exercise and domineer authority over like the Gentiles do. But if you desire to be great, you must be the one that serves the most. Okay. So this authority is going out like this. It is meeting people where they are at, but it is having an intimate nature and understanding of the value of that. Because when you don't understand the value of someone or something, abuse is inevitable. But when you understand the value of something and you have wisdom of that, then that wisdom and all you're getting, get understanding, says that in Proverbs. That wisdom of that gives you the insight and understanding to be able to navigate properly. And that's what real authority is. Real authority is having an intimate understanding of the value and nature of what has been created because you understand the creator's purpose for it. And if you're going to understand the creator's purpose for anything, then you have to understand and start with union and not separation. All right, saints, I'm going to go ahead and close this down right here today. Thank you for being with me. Plan on being with me next week. We may dive a bit further into this about what this actually is, but we are beginning and reshaping and reframing the framework of what authority actually is. Okay. And authority, true authority is. All right. We learned about what a few of those words were today. And we also learned that we are beginning with union, not separation. Union, not separation, which also looks like belonging versus lostness. And remember, saints, in all lostness, there is belonging first. Belonging comes before the lostness. Lostness came after belonging. So belonging is first. So understand today, you belong. You have been accepted in the beloved. I don't care what side of the tracks you're on. I don't care where you're at. Father, I pray today that the people listening, whether they're listening live or whether they're listening afterwards, wherever this may find them, may they understand that they are accepted. May they know that they are loved. May they know that they belong. And even though they may feel lost, they know that they are loved right where they're at. I'm going to say that to you. You are loved, and there's nothing you can do about it right where you're at. Without anything changing. Listen, it's not about you changing you. This is about God changing you. See, when the fish come in, the person that caught the fish cleans them. Okay. So remember, you're loved. There's nothing you can do about it. And also know this, as Jesus is, so are you.